This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Do you ever have a story that you just can't get out of your head?
One that you play the details of over and over with your friends?
Well, you've come to the right place. I'm Claire.
And I'm Susan.
And this is Justice Pending,
a weekly true crime podcast where we discuss tantalizing crimes with more questions than answers.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Justice Pending. I'm Claire.
And I'm Susan. And today we're going back to Gainesville, Florida in 1989. This is the story of Tiffany Sessions, a 20-year-old University of Florida student who vanished while out on a walk and has never been found.
Yeah, her disappearance became one of the largest missing person searches in Florida's history. And decades later, investigators believe she might be the victim of a serial killer. But her remains have still never been located.
And what makes this case especially haunting is the tireless fight her parents waged and still wage to find answers even more than 35 years later.
All right, let's get into it. Who was Tiffany Sessions? She was a finance major at the University of Florida. She was determined, smart, and driven. Friends described her as the kind of person who set goals and went after them. She dreamed of one day running her own company.
She had grown up with divorced parents. Her mom, Hillary, raised her while serving in the Air Force, and her dad, Patrick, was a real estate executive. In her college years, Tiffany had rebuilt a relationship with her dad and half-brother Jason, and that bond meant just so much to her.
She was very close to her mom. Hillary often said that Tiffany was her masterpiece. She was her only child, and the two shared everything from horseback rides on her grandparents' farm to traveling and taking trips together.
Yeah, and it seems like Tiffany really loved the outdoors. So let's get into what happened on this day she disappeared. So February 9th, 1989, Tiffany left her Gainesville apartment around 6 p.m. to take her usual power walk outside. She was wearing red sweatpants, a white sweatshirt that said Aspen, and her gold Rolex watch, which was actually a gift from her father. And that's the last we know.
Let's talk about what happened right when they realized Tiffany was missing. From the beginning, Tiffany's case felt different. She wasn't in trouble. She didn't have relationship drama. She was reliable. And so when she didn't return, alarms went off pretty quickly.
Yeah, her father, Pat, mobilized an enormous search almost overnight. He used his marketing background to organize volunteers, and he got Tiffany's photo on pizza boxes, billboards, news reports. Even Dan Marino and John Walsh got involved. I mean, those talk about heavy hitters.
Yeah, these are major power players, right? And everyone was looking for Tiffany. I think there was a tremendous amount of hope that she would be found. Hundreds of people joined searches and combed the grounds looking for any signs of Tiffany. There was a hotline that was receiving around 600 calls every day. But in those early days, technology and record keeping just weren't what they are now. And many have said that they believe that leads slipped through the cracks and were not properly followed up on.
Yeah, also making it even more difficult for anyone to follow up on, they found nothing in their search. There were over 700 volunteers. They're combing the area, walking her, the route she would normally take. They didn't find anything, not her watch, not the Walkman. Remember, this is 1989.
Right.
Nothing of hers is, found along the way.
Right. So it really makes me think, just using my investigative, journalist brain, that she was not taken with force on that route. If she's walking and there's some type of physical confrontation, you're going to have items dropped. You're going to have signs of a struggle, maybe like a missing shoe, right? Something.
Right.
But without a single trace, it really makes it sound like she got into the car with someone, right? I mean, there's no sign if you're walking and you willingly get into someone's vehicle, there wouldn't be any signs because, hey, it's 1989. There's not doorbell cameras. They're not license plate scanners. You're not going to see what's going on if you're not there.
That's right. I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Right, right. It really lends itself to the idea that she willingly got into someone's car. So let's talk about some suspects. There were
Right.
no shortage of them. So some leads pointed to serial offenders, like in the Gainesville, Florida area, who were out of prison at that time. They were running down all sorts of leads on just sort of the usual suspects, right? So people who commit violent crimes against women. You're looking at rapists, you're looking at people who've had attempted murder or murder charges, but for one reason or another are out on the streets, which is terrifying to think about, but it does happen. So one inmate even claimed that a man named Michael Knickerbocker had confessed to killing Tiffany, but that later turned out to be a hoax.
Yeah, there were, I mean, like you said, there were so many suspects. There was another theory linked to her disappearance to a guy named Danny Rolling. His nickname is the Gainesville Ripper, so of course you're going to look at him.
Right.
He murdered 5 students in 1990, so just, a year later. But he didn't do this one, or wasn't involved in this disappearance because he had an alibi. He was in Louisiana the night Tiffany disappeared, and they confirmed that.
Yeah. So that's one of those things where he looks so good for it. He's got the MO, he's in the area, and
Yeah.
suddenly it all goes away whenever they can prove he was in another state at the same time that she disappeared.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's rough. So the lack of evidence made every tip feel like a lifeline. Her family even endured extortion attempts from con artists claiming to know where Tiffany was. I mean, that is
Oh.
really horrific.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this is also, if you go back to 1989, this is the time of those, late night call-in psychic shows.
Oh
I feel
gosh.
like
Yeah.
there was that must have been running rampant around here, and it was the zeitgeist at the time.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they were going through that. But through it all, her parents really kept pushing, as so many families that we talk about on this show do, and they refused to give up, even when months turned into years.
Yeah, so they never stopped searching for answers for their daughter Tiffany. And, let's talk about a development in 2010. So there was a real suspect that emerged from the shadows, a man named Paul Rolls. So he was a convicted murderer and a rapist with a long history of violence. He had killed before. And in 1992, another young woman, Elizabeth Foster, was murdered in Gainesville, not far from where Tiffany vanished.
Okay, here, this sounds like a real connection.
Yeah.
So he worked as a construction worker, actually very near to Tiffany's walking route, which, remember,
Yeah.
was basically daily and the same route. So, he could
Yep.
have seen her. And in addition to being a construction worker, he also delivered pizza. And on the very day that she disappeared, he had skipped his pizza delivery, clock in. Like, he didn't show up to his job that day.
Yeah, that's extremely suspicious. And when you talk about these kinds of crimes, these crimes of opportunity, you look for these patterns, right? And so the fact that this is Tiffany's regular walking route and Paul Rolls is working near that route, that gives him the opportunity to have seen her walking before, found her attractive, thought about doing something to her, and then for whatever reason that day deciding to do something about it. And the fact that he has this regular pizza delivery job and then doesn't show up, I
Yeah.
mean, it's really starting to add up, looking very, very suspicious for him to be responsible.
That's right. So, but they never got a chance to ask him.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it was 2013 when Paul Rolls died of cancer in prison. So afterward, detectives were going through his belongings and they found a very interesting notation. So he had written down the date 2989, February 9th, 1989, the day that Tiffany disappeared, and written the number 2 beside it.
Ugh, that is so chilling. I have so many questions here. How
Yep.
come they're not searching belongings prior to this?
Yeah.
I mean, this seems really, I
Well,
don't know.
who knows when he wrote it, right? But
Right.
still, I
But
agree.
still,
It's very it's very troubling, and you just think of the missed opportunity. Like, this happened in 1989. He doesn't die until 2013, but we're unable to talk to him, until then. That's
yeah.
pretty hard to believe.
I mean, I guess, and that's a long time, 89 to 92 before he's incarcerated. I mean, this is, yeah. I'd like to know what else was written in that notebook.
Yeah.
But, investigators, as we are implying now, believe this meant that Tiffany was his second victim. So back then, that number 2 means second victim. Of course, there could have been more. Tiffany's father, her family also believes this to be the case. But this is really circumstantial evidence. It's
Yeah.
just extremely chilling.
Absolutely. And as you might expect, they brought out the canine unit. They had cadaver dogs searching the area that Rouse was known to have put, victims in the ground where he'd buried other women. And they actually had an alert and they did some excavations, but they did not find Tiffany Sessions.
Yeah. I mean, and you think about the Florida weather and the decomposition. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
it's not an easy place to find remains all those years later.
At this point, yeah, you're definitely looking just for bones. That's all that would remain. And you have to hope that she was buried and not put in some body of water, because
Right.
if so, that's long gone.
Right. Well, Hillary Sessions, her mom, has said she really just wants to give her daughter a proper Christian burial. And her father, Pat, has poured decades into advocacy, helping other families of missing children. I mean, these are 2 people that A, aren't giving up, but B, are really trying to prevent this from happening to another family.
Yeah. It reminds me of the Laura Smither case
Mhm.
in Houston, where this young girl, she was 12 and she goes out jogging and she's never seen alive again. And it was later proven that it took 20 years, but it was later proven that a serial killer named William Reese had abducted her on her route. Guess what he did for a living at that time, Susan?
Construction work?
Correct. Yes, he was a construction worker in that area, and it had rained that morning, so the construction job was rained out. He didn't have anything to do, and he saw this 12-year-old girl jogging alone, and ended up abducting her from her route and burying her in water. She was found. She was actually found. I think it took about 2 weeks, but they didn't make the connection between William Reese, the serial killer, for 20 years until he confessed to other crimes and eventually admitted that he did this one too. So it just makes me think, the family in Laura Smithers' case never gave up, and this family isn't either. So Tiffany's family has pushed to change Florida law. And in 2008, the state actually passed the Jennifer Kesse and Tiffany Sessions Missing Persons Act, which expanded protections for missing adults. And we actually talked about Jennifer Kesse in our last episode.
Yeah.
Another young woman who went missing from her apartment in Florida, and that's another unsolved case. So, yeah, you look at these families and you think that they're doing something with their grief, and they're really making a difference for victims' families everywhere. And no one wants anything like this to happen in their family, but it really is a testament to the strength of these families that they've been able to do something positive with it.
Totally. Yeah. And, there's this myth around, oh, they're an adult. They could have gone away on their own. You have to wait 48 hours. I mean,
Yeah.
we saw this myth appearing in Lauren DeMolo's case too. It's like, no, if someone is missing, you can go into action. So I'm glad
Yes.
this is now in law.
Yeah, it's really important. And there's actually there's a law like this in Texas now, and it was the result of the Kaylee Mendati case that was in San Antonio. It was a young woman who was last seen with her boyfriend at a music festival and disappears, and her family and friends cannot get a hold of her for days. They're calling, they're trying to get a hold of her, and they're unable. They go to the police, they try to make a missing persons report, and it doesn't go anywhere because she's an adult, right? And so she was later, she was later taken to the hospital actually by her boyfriend, unconscious. And it's a wild story for another episode, perhaps. But um, she was the victim of a violent death, and her family passed the Clear Act in Texas, which is exactly, what we've been talking about. It's about a way to declare an adult is missing right away. As soon as you know that this person's missing, they're allowed to put out a clear alert now in Texas.
Wow.
That it's like an Amber Alert. We have that, for children. And so the Clear Alert is for adults, and it's missing endangered adults. And it really gets the word out. So, these types of advocacy issues are so important, and they really can hopefully prevent some of these tragedies from occurring by allowing people to know that these adults are in danger, in potential danger, and to get the word out about what they look like, what their car is, their last known whereabouts, and really mobilize the public to help look for them.
Yeah. And in this case, there are still searches happening for
Yes.
these remains, which is incredible to me. And that's really as a result of the family and the motivation that they've retained throughout the years.
Yes, the fact that here we are more than 3 decades later and tips are still coming in, like,
Yeah.
not only the searches, but they continue to search for answers, and they've never given up hope that her remains will be found.
Yeah. I mean, we all hope that they will be, to give her family a little bit of solace there.
Yes, so all signs point to the fact that Paul Rolls abducted Tiffany that night in 1989, but without her remains, we don't have definitive proof.
Right. And then there's an even bigger question here, is how many more victims are out there?
Right. Absolutely. The heartbreaking truth is that Tiffany's case remains officially unsolved.
Yeah. I mean, she was, so young, and
Yeah.
it's just so tragic.
It really is.
Yeah. So if anyone has information about the disappearance of Tiffany Sessions, you can contact the Alachua County Sheriff's Office. And you never know, if even the smallest tip could make a difference. Maybe, your dog is smelling something strange in a yard. I don't know, give a call.
Yeah, her family have said again and again they will never give up, and they just want to bring her home. So we hope that someone out there knows something and says something, and she definitely deserves to have the end of her story known. And we hope that justice won't be pending for Tiffany Sessions for long. So thanks for joining us for this episode of Justice Pending, and we'll look for you next week with an all-new case. Justice Pending is recorded in Dallas, Texas for Rebel Studios. It's hosted by me, Claire Sanama, and Susan Passoni. Our theme music is Bending Truth, licensed at premiumbeat.com. We appreciate all listener feedback. Leave a review wherever you're listening right now, and we might read it on the air. Thanks for joining us.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.